I'll try to record to the cloud if we have any more room left.
Okay.
On the night before he died, Jesus said to his troubled disciples this: "As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you.
You do anything.
Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. I have said these things to you, so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." For Jesus, the pathway of love leads to a pinnacle of joy. And I thought that might be a good way for us to start our conversation of this. And tonight, I wanted to do sort of arrival and day one, and then we will, and we'll see, and maybe we'll do a section a week for 3 weeks, or maybe we'll want to talk and extend it a little bit longer because it's such a rich book. But I'll just open it up with, and you know, mute yourselves and unmute yourselves or raise your hand. It's a little bit crazy on Zoom, so we might end up talking over each other a little bit, but let's be patient. What in this first section resonated with you? What stuck with you? What got you really thinking?
Humor. I loved the humor between these two.
That was great, yeah. Very sarcastic humor, but they accepted it.
Yeah.
I thought it was as cute as it could be.
It was
And,
sarcastic, but it was cute, yeah, at the same time.
There's a mutual respect between the two of them.
Yeah.
And with the author who is Jewish.
Yeah.
And secular. He calls himself a secular Jewish family man, right? And Desmond Tutu is a family man. A number of children, evidently. And didn't Dalai Lama talk about celibacy? And Tutu kind of reared back and said, "Really?"
That was another humorous part.
Yeah, that was cute.
They're both so well
What struck
grounded.
me,
It's fascinating
What-
to learn about this.
what I enjoyed was they were full of joy and they were eating and talking and laughing. And it was giving them a lot of joy. And that's maybe what we should all be trying to continue to do, is eating, talking, and laughing.
Yes, I thought the aim of the book was tremendous.
Mm.
And of course it's terribly appropriate right now. But just the whole idea of what they did, I thought was tremendous.
The part that spoke to me had to do with how you can feel better by helping others,
Uh-huh.
and that's helped me with this time of just being separated from everybody, just reaching out to others. It's powerful. It's uplifting.
Have others of you experienced that? And where have you been reaching out to others?
What some of our friends have been doing in our area, I have a lot of single friends that are either widows or they're just single, and we've been, every now and then somebody will bake something and we go put it on each other's porches, and it's fun to open your door and find a surprise on your porch.
Oh.
Kind of uplifting. And you've been by yourself all day, or you know. Well, that's one thing we've done.
Mm.
It kind of also reminds me of our Stephen Ministry program in general,
I
because
was going to say that, Julie.
every time we have, people thank us for what we've done, and yet it's a gift. It's such a gift to us. I
Right.
sometimes feel guilty that I receive more than I give.
Mhm.
But that's
Mhm.
that recursive thing that he's talking about, that
Right.
the more you set yourself up to give to others, the more it washes back. I think that's the more you do it, the more there is.
Mhm.
You reap
And
what
then-
you sow.
Huh?
You reap what you sow.
Yeah, right.
It comes back to you.
In a good way. That
Exactly.
usually we say
And
you
hope.
reap what you sow. And it's,
In a good way.
Yeah.
Well, I never take it that way. It's the other way. So if you're putting it out there and it comes back, it usually comes back tenfold.
I want to, there's a comment later in the book, but it was so good, it stuck with me that I want to share it now. Much later, the Archbishop says, I've sometimes joked and said, God doesn't know very much math. Because when you give to others, it should be that you are subtracting from yourself. But in this incredible kind of way, I've certainly found it to be the case so many times, you gave, and then it seems like, in fact, you are making space for more to be given to you.
That's what you just said, Julie.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Another thing I thought was interesting was the acceptance of other faiths, other religions of the world.
Right.
And really total acceptance and
Mhm.
letting people go their own way and to live happily, respect each other. I found that really good.
And no religion. Atheists
Yeah.
too.
Mhm.
There was a comment that I had to chuckle at when they were talking about the religions, that they basically all show love, have love in their philosophy. It's the religious that are the problems, not the religion.
yeah.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
That
Well, who did Jesus have the most trouble with?
was his
The
disciple.
religious, yeah.
The religious elite.
Mhm.
Well, and the priests and the religious behaviors. Yep.
So
I
how
think that
many?
I kind of zeroed in on it, and it's an insignificant thing, but he was saying that when you're born, you need your mother's touch. And my mother told me that when I was born, the doctors all said, no, leave me. I cried a lot, probably wanting love. But anyway, she said, I wanted to pick you up and hug you. But she said, I was told just to leave you alone in your crib and let you cry and not do that. And I think, well, I don't think I'm that bad for the result, because I feel loving and I reach out to people. So, but I can see that if you're left alone all the time, I don't know. I just found that interesting, that you really need that to be more social in the world.
Let's actually stay there for a minute, because what do you think the doctors are trying to establish in that small child?
Socialization.
I mean, I can
Like if the baby is crying and the doctor says, don't pick up the baby, why?
Self-soothing. Independence.
Self-soothing. Yeah, and I think it's a way of trying to teach some self-reliance, right?
Independence, yes. Came
Independence,
across.
self-reliance. And I think these two would say, boy, is that overrated.
Yeah.
We live in a culture that really values independence and self-reliance, and we're miserable.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think those are connected?
Maybe.
Big time.
Absolutely.
That's interesting when you say this. the Dalai Lama says that he gets up early in the morning and prays or meditates for 5 hours. And Tutu says that's too many. I found that Desmond Tutu is much more approachable and warm and fuzzy. Dalai Lama, for all of their hand holding and the precious photographs of them, seems to have more of a self-confidence, maybe even to the point of saying, I am a teacher and you can't best me on that. I can teach you something, even, friend.
But you think of his upbringing and his isolation from the world. I mean, that seems a consequence of that.
And I think his monastic.
Yes.
Correct.
His entire behavior, yes, all of those hours of meditation and prayer set him up to be more that way. Right? Makes sense.
I enjoyed him talking about the simple meals that he's eating and how much he loved these simple Tibetan meals. And I can draw conclusions to how we're all not eating out like we used to, and we're all cooking more at home and making our own bread, all the things that you read about people doing and enjoying like simple things that were sort of bygone, especially for us here in LA. Like, I never made bread until this year.
I ate a lot of cereal.
But there can be joy in simple things.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
How do you start your mornings?
Coffee.
Dogs.
Dogs. That's.
I meditate, but it's only for 10 minutes, not 5 hours.
After you.
Yeah, my meditation, it's I think 7 minutes, Julie.
Pass, y'all.
Then Larry and I walk for an hour. Because Barb doesn't walk with me anymore.
We had a little knee problem.
Don't make me feel bad.
She'll be back. She'll be back.
We sympathize.
I like that section about the 4 circuits of the brain.
I love that part.
Yeah, I underlined it.
Me too.
I think that there is, like, we talk about spiritual disciplines a lot, but there's also like almost a happiness or a joy discipline.
Oh, it's the science of that. I'm so impressed that there are people that are studying that and making those connections for us in brain connections, neurological connections, because there has to be some truth to that. And it's so nice when you read how the science informs what we intuitively know about.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
About
it makes perfect sense, and yet it's so reassuring to read. Like, oh yeah, that works.
Yeah. I marked that up a lot.
Yeah.
Because
But then at the end on that section, we're hardwired to generally unconsciously be more prejudicial because we respond to people who look like us.
But it makes perfect sense in in that small sense, because yes, if we have learned to recognize our mother, and our mother looks somewhat like us, well, even if she doesn't, whatever the mother looks like, or the father, the ones who take care of us the most, that's our imprint. In the same way those little monkeys imprinted on those dolls, and in our old science experiments. It makes sense, and it makes some understanding, makes it a little more understanding about that it is unconscious. You can become aware of it. It isn't that it's a bad thing. It was a self-saving thing when you're little, that you go to the people you know and recognize. And after that, it's up to us to do things, do the right things later and widen out our trust levels. But it makes sense scientifically. Wouldn't want to imprint something that wasn't safe for you. You want the one that hovers over the crib. It's the one that you know is going to pick you up. It makes such sense. That was fascinating to read. But our ability to be generous, that's the fourth one. Because there's so much talk about people, not necessarily being generous. And then you look around the world today, how much money is flying out of people's hands in different directions, out of their bank accounts. There's so many places to send your money, you don't know where to go.
That's all my mail is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what all our mail is coming in requests for money.
Right. Exactly. Places organizations you've never heard of.
Well, I know, and so we have to be somewhat selective about where we do that. But they're the people in the fires, the people in the hurricanes, the people that don't have food around the corner. It's crazy. And I don't know but that idea of the more we give, the more that's that joy thing again. It's a recursive thing. When you feel good, and when you feel good, then you want to do more of that.
My best mornings are when I wake up in the morning and I start praying about, like Chip, or I'll pray about somebody, or I'll pray about somebody who's on my mind, and just pray for them. And it just really starts the day off, because I really get filled real quick with a lot of gifts of from God and from the Holy Spirit. As soon as you just start giving away, you get so much stuff that it also gives you space, and it makes you want to give more and more and more, because it makes you feel better, more and more and more. So anyway, because you were talking about that, Pastor, about what do you think about what's the first thing you do in the morning? Mm-hmm. A lot of times we used to have a regular thing where Stephanie and I would read from Lloyd Ogilvy's prayer book, and he had these wonderful daily things, and they always get you started off on the right direction and thinking and opening yourself up to the Spirit. And so there's that. Mm-hmm. And then, but the really good days are when you start off clean slate. You're not thinking about anything. Maybe you had a bad dream. Stephanie had one. Maybe? Did you? Mm-hmm. Was it bad?
Yeah, well, different ones, since we're having this COVID stuff.
Yeah. It's like she's having dreams in color now. She never had before.
Colorful, yeah.
But the whole thing of just getting the day off on the right path.
Yeah.
Really, really feels good.
Well, I'm contractually obligated to at least quote Luther once during the study, so I'll do it now and get it out of the way. And remind you of Luther's definition of sin is incurvata se, which is curved in on self.
Right.
So the visual of what sin is being curved in on self. And so part of what this is, what generosity does and what these two guys are saying is, curve yourself outward.
Right.
Instead of curving in, curve out.
Shift your focus.
Right. And you end up a whole lot healthier, as like a flower opening rather than closing.
And this, both of these men are described in those 4 pillars that they both agree. The fastest way to the state that we're talking about is to start with love and compassion. The thing that brought me up short was, I think, the third element of that, which is our ability to focus and avoid mind wandering. That is a tough one. To hold your focus and wander is, next to impossible for me, I think.
Well, I don't think you're the only one that applies to. We have so much activity going on in our world today, especially in this country. All of the media, all of our technological little tools that we play with. You know, there's so much to read. There's so much onslaught of information to process. It's difficult to focus on any of it.
It's the computer's fault, which I've been.
But we can still push the off button. But we don't.
If you've ever taken a yoga class, and I'm just a very basic beginner.
I have.
But there's a lot of talk from the practitioners about quieting the voices in your head.
Right.
And, you know, centering on your breathing and pushing out every other thought. And wow, is that hard?
We're in such a busy world, it becomes a challenge to do that.
I've just been a total failure at doing that. Meditation just has never stuck with me. And I've got a daughter who believes in it and does it all the time and regularly. So still something I'm working on.
But it's not the transcendental meditation for you, is it? It's
I'm
not.
sorry?
It's not having a mantra. It's prayer meditation. Is that what you're talking about?
Just focusing on any one thing for that long is a real challenge.
I can tell you all from personal experience that it's a lot like going to the gym and working a muscle, just like any other muscle. The more you work it and the more consistent you are with going to the gym and working that muscle, the stronger it gets. And over time, it becomes almost reflexive, almost too easy even, you know, in regards to, for example, your morning routine. You wake up and the first, say, 20 minutes or so at least should be for you to fill your own cup, to put on your own emotional armor, because you know you're going out there to go to battle. And you're not going to go out to battle without putting on your emotional armor, are you? You're going to get slayed. But it's a matter of putting that on and taking that time for self and filling your cup, or curling up, if you will, for yourself before you explode and jump out for the rest of the world. At least that seems to be the approach that works for me, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Good stuff, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's very true with the amount of anxiety that there is in the world now, especially with young people, is that they don't have the time. There's so many pressures coming from outside, and everything is about getting ahead rather than being in the moment and learning how to deal with the anxiety and center yourself in the here and now.
Well, and yeah, and that's the point. It's not a matter of they don't have the time. We all have the same 24 hours. They don't consciously take or make the time for themselves, and it depletes them. And I know what I'm talking about. I promise you I know what I'm talking about on this. Thank you. Family backs my play on that more often than not. You know, Brian and I, when he was telling me we were going to study this book, he asked me my thoughts, and I said, joy. That's a conscious choice every morning when you get up. And it really kind of is. It's a perspective thing. Gratitude helps a lot, but it really is. You got to make that choice every day, because most people, they're going to wake up and reach for their phone first thing. And what do you think's on the phone for you to look at? It ain't positive.
That's right.
It's on us as individuals to, you know, find the happiness within ourselves. It's not going to come through the screen too often. That's for sure.
Although my meditation app is on my phone.
Mine is too.
There you go. Good for you.
Am I muted? I don't even know. I actually am very, very grateful for technology these days. You know, we have all of our families scattered all over, and groups like this that keep us together, and churches through the phone and the computer. So I can see the electronics and the technology as a positive force as well right now. And when the book was talking about, you know, we really thrive in connection, I I think it's more important than ever that we have things like this. I love seeing Mrs. Brower and Jean Hagen and everybody.
I agree with that, Danielle. It's just like all of it. It can be a tool or it can be something else. It's dependent on the usage, how it's applied.
Yep.
I have a group of moms that has been getting together for like a Tuesday or Wednesday night game night online. And some weeks as it's approaching, I think, oh, I don't want to do it. I've been on the computer all day doing work things, or I just don't want, I'm too tired, I don't want to do it. And every time we do it, I have the best time just laughing with them, and it's so fun. And I think, okay, I'm looking forward to it again next week. And sometimes it's hard to rally for it again because time is so precious, but the connection is worth more than the time, I think.
Right, right.
Years ago, I heard Shane Hips, who was an ad executive turned pastor, which is an interesting slant on life. And he said, I want to start with 2 stories. And I don't remember anything else he said after his beginning, because he said, I want to tell you 2 stories to begin with, about 2 stories about cell phones. The first story is that we got the phone call that our mother was dying in northern Arizona, and we didn't have much time. And so my brother and I flew to Phoenix as quickly as we could, rented a car together, and started driving north to the hospital. And we said our goodbyes on the phone because we weren't sure we were going to make it in time. And thank God for technology, which allowed us to do that and to say goodbye to our dying mother. And to have peace. And the second story is he said, I haven't seen my best friend in 6 months. We text each other constantly. We talk on the phone a couple times a day. But we haven't seen each other in 6 months. And we were on the phone lamenting how, this is all pre-pandemic. We just haven't seen each other for a long time, and we need to make time to see each other. And then he said, and we live on the same street.
Pretty telling, huh?
But because the phone, it didn't dawn on him to walk down to see each other.
Go stand on the sidewalk.
Yeah. So it can divide and it can unite.
Exactly.
Based on how it's used.
I think my mom said it best. It's really it's a tool like anything else. It's how you use it. Video, for example, we have the opportunity to get together and commune and discuss the ideas and whatnot via Zoom over video chat. And I would say that that's a positive thing. On the other side of the coin, you have certain baseball teams that are using video technology to cheat and win World Series, which I would say is a decidedly bad thing. So it really is, it's all in how you use it. And that's why I say it goes back to personal accountability for self, even with the tools that we have in our hands, be it a cell phone or a meditation practice or gratitude. These are tools we have that we need to use and use properly.
We'll get to forgiveness in a future week, Kenny. So stay tuned.
Astros.
I'm not there yet.
I was explaining to our 3-year-old granddaughter today about who Jesus is. Somehow it came up. And I said it was 2,000 years ago. And I started saying all the things they didn't have then. They don't have electricity, they don't have cars, they don't have TVs, they don't have computers, they don't have light bulbs. And she said, well, how do they watch TV?
Impossible.
That's cute.
Amazing.
That's
Think
their
about
world versus the one you're talking about. Yeah. It's like culture shock. What are you talking about, Grandpa?
That's good.
Priceless.
What we haven't talked about is that part about nothing beautiful comes without some suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess maybe we skipped around that a little bit, but that's that whole, I mean, the older I get, the older we all become, the more it becomes apparent, but nobody gets out of this life alive. So that whole idea of going through the fire, I don't know if that was a term used in this or not, but I think so. Refining, the idea of refining, that the more that when you suffer, it's painful, but out of that comes growth in compassion and a growth in gratitude. And it's hard to say that to young people, to people who are very young, even to little kids. I mean,
Yeah.
when they first start to suffer emotionally, and you can look at that growth all the way through. But I can remember being horrified that life was so miserable. I don't, that people were dying, or that things weren't going to be the same as they were before. And I get it more now, but I think I appreciated the way they wrote about this, the way they talked about this, and I think there's more of that coming. Right?
Especially his example of Nelson Mandela's 27 years in prison.
Yeah,
that really spoke to that.
I think the framing of the whole book against these men, their age and their physical conditions, talking about the Archbishop's prostate cancer and the Dalai Lama's bad knees and their advancing age. And I think it speaks to sort of the frailty of life and wisdom that comes with many years of perspective. Our boys are living in New York City in the pandemic and very moved and activated by all of the movements happening right now with Black Lives Matter and all these things. And they're very, very much wanting the world to change quickly and lamenting why it isn't changing fast enough and why we're not doing more and why isn't it happening now. And I'm saying to them, what has happened just in a few short months is amazing, and the work everyone is doing is so amazing, and things are happening that we wouldn't have dreamt of 2 years ago, like the NBA playing with the jerseys, and it's all amazing and it's happening, but to them it's like, oh, it's just taking forever. I think, I would love to hear the Archbishop's views, like, to think about the long history of apartheid and all of the things he witnessed, and now to see what's happening now. And it doesn't feel like things are changing enough, and yet they really are changing quickly.
Brian, you used to call that church speed in your sermon a couple of weeks ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The slow, inexorable march for understanding.
Yeah.
It reminds me of an Army Special Forces sniper saying, and I know my mother hates this saying in particular, but it applies here. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That's what they teach you in sniper school. That means basically, in a nutshell, if you get it right the first time, you don't have to do it 9 times until you get it right. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And too many people in this country, we've grown up on it. A whole generation, even my generation, grew up on instant gratification. How can I get it now?
Well, and that's in this book over and over, that whole hedonism thing. And it doesn't work. We want things fast, but it doesn't work that.
You get fast, and it's very fleeting, and then it's over, and then we're miserable again.
Yeah.
Or we get something we didn't want.
Right.
We thought
some other blessing we weren't planning on, and can we see it as a blessing? Can we see suffering as an opportunity? Can we see, and that has to do with the mind shift and the perspective shift, or what Jesus would call repentance, thinking differently.
I still love in the book though when the Archbishop walks into the big house, wherever it was, Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
That was good. That was classic.
Rich.
I do want to be rich.
What a beautiful sense of humor.
Yeah, they're good at poking each other a little bit, but I love how they touch each other too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so sweet.
And rub hands.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And foreheads.
Mm-hmm.
And to see men be so fond of each other, you know, to say, you're a very dear friend to me. It's just so lovely to hear men talking to each other that way.
Yeah.
And it's so unusual to have men stroke each other's hands.
Yeah, it's really lovely.
It's very tender.
Yeah, it's sweet.
Very much so.
How they respect each other so much. Yeah.
Well, as I was reading the book, Danielle gave me permission to tell this story. The book in the other room, and in here she's got on the television the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And all those women do is try to out-offend one another. And so they're all offended by what the other one has done or said. And I'm reading this book talking about if you just, you know, think about what the other person's perspective is or whatever, you know, what are the lessons in the book? They're the absolute, the absolute opposite of what's going on in this television.
Well, there's the contrast right there.
I'm having my, like, you know, girl cave moment in here. I'm like, leave me alone. I'm going to watch my lady shows.
Like,
he comes by the door and he's
these
like,
women need to read this book.
This is not okay.
But honestly, like, for the longest time, my life, my personality has been a negative sort of character. And so I would hear things from people, my wife included, would say, can't you just choose to be happy? Just wake up and say, I'm going to be happy today. And I struggle with that. And I don't know that it's a switch. And I know they talk about that a lot in here. And that's what I'm getting a lot from this book, is trying to, I don't want it to be this magic wand, you know, idea. I just think there's a lot of work that needs to go into, Brian, what you were saying about making your brain work those perspectives. Mm-hmm. And that's tricky. It's hard.
Is it as simple as like widening the microscope, you know, so you're getting...
Well, the Dalai Lama talks about I'm one of billions of people. And so he's always thinking, and yet some days I go, I'm so lonely. You know, that's such a, like you say, turning into yourself. And it's a terrible way to think, because there are millions of people suffering way worse than I am today, or whatever, you know, whatever that moment is where I'm feeling so lonely and small. And so, yeah, the Dalai Lama, that's a very big, easy, quick fix for me, is to just say, I'm one of billions. And I'm certainly not at the bottom of that pile. Right. So.
It's a discipline. As you said, it's working a muscle. It's getting your brain to like wire those poor circuits back into shape.
Yeah.
And I think to
also
circle back to what Barbara said. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Stephanie, go.
Just quickly, that you have to be willing to make a change at any time in your life, which I tend to struggle with, because I tend to think it's too late to do this or that. I asked my dad once, how would you describe our family? I've seen him for most of my life, and then we became reunited. How would you describe our family? He said, well, I would call us, we Edwardses are negatively optimistic. That's exactly it. And so it was at that point that I'm going to have to go against what seems to be maybe even chemical character. I wasn't influenced by him. I didn't live with him. But I would like to be willing, and Murray can vouch for this, to change the fact that I think I'm going to wake up negative, because I always have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a self-defense mechanism, though. It's like we're always playing expectation management with our own brain. And if you if you kind of set yourself up like I'm a loser, I'm behind, I'm not as good as my neighbors, I'm not successful, then you've always you've met your own expectations.
Yeah, well, self-fulfilling prophecies.
Right. So it's about how do you realize it's all about gratitude and putting yourself in widening that lens out and seeing that you have tools at your disposal and you have gifts to offer other people. And
I always joke and say I'm a narcissistic pessimist. Bad things only happen to me.
I do think that the idea of focusing on gratitude widens us out, because any of us sitting here, we all obviously have things that we're unhappy about or miserable about or worried about, all sorts of things. But I think I started changing some of my thinking when I started reading Ann Voskamp, that 1,000 Gifts, and her books after that. And it seems to me that there's been, and maybe this isn't true, but I think in my reading I have come across so many more things about gratitude begetting more gratitude and changing the way we think. And I do think that's one of those things that maybe you can do if you aren't a good meditator. I'm not the best meditator, but I can sit and tell myself the things that I'm grateful for today.
Obviously picked good reading material.
Yeah, well, that was
that
good
in itself is a conscious effort right there to improve.
Yeah, I think because
so kudos to you.
Well, and I do love her writing. So if you haven't read that and you're looking for a second thing to read, I think she's fabulous. But one of those big things is just make a list every day of the things that you're grateful for. And the more I do that, the better off that noise in the back of my head is.
Well, it's a conscious effort.
Yeah. And some days I don't feel like making that dang list. Because
it's an exercise of your brain.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so I'm not the best meditator. My mind goes everywhere, but so I just tell myself instead, okay, I can make a list.
It's a good idea.
With your
list, maybe you want to try that instead of meditating for a month and then see. I don't know.
I can make a list of things to do.
Yeah, better the list. Yeah.
Things to thank for.
But that's like the post-its that we got with the communion a couple months ago, or whenever it was, and to put them around of things that we're thankful for, and that's post-its instead of a list. It's the same
idea
type of thing.
Yeah.
Ruth, you were going to say something?
Barbara, I was just going to say something. So I've heard about the gratitude lists, but one thing that I heard recommended is to say, I am grateful for this because. And so when you start thinking about why you're grateful for something, it becomes even richer.
That's good. Yeah.
Good point.
May I make a comment?
Even though we can't see you, yes.
I know. I think I've mentioned this before in some of the groups. In the 1990s, Oprah had a woman on her show for a period of time named Sarah Ban Breathnach. And she has written a book called Simple Abundance, a day book of comfort and joy. And she's also written a book called Something More, Excavating Your Authentic Self. And what she emphasized on that is what you were mentioning, that if you get into the practice of each day looking at the positive and turn away from negative thoughts, you'll see how much there is in your life that enriches you. And it can be very simplistic, but altogether, it takes the emphasis away from you looking at yourself and going out beyond yourself and looking at things. So if you haven't ever heard of her, there's just a lot of good material in her books.
There's a
And-
journal too, a gratitude journal that goes along with some of her
yes.
books.
So you've seen that then. So you kind of know what I'm mentioning.
It's fabulous. I haven't read it for a while, but I keep it close by. I've
Yeah.
gone through it at least twice.
That one, the simple abundance one, actually has the kind of is decorative like this.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you can't see it, of course, but I.
No, but there it is. It's like that, but all over the cover.
Yeah, I just find it something to refer to frequently to get a lot of info back and support. And I find when I'm around really negative people, I feel they're unhappy because they aren't looking out at the good beyond themselves in the world. That's just kind of my philosophy of life.
Bad for them.
Well, and we've all heard and said prayers that begin with, "Dear Lord, we thank you for."
Yeah.
And that's in its own way a gratitude journal. So we can all do that at any time, right?
Right.
So I can tell this tale out of school because Julie's sitting there. I haven't done it as much. I haven't done it as much since I stopped walking with her. But I think we went through a period when we would talk every morning about all sorts of things. Some days it would all be all grumpy stuff. Lots of terrible things were happening, and we would just tromp down the street, and it would all be awful. And then when we got back to the driveway, we'd say, "Oh, look, the sun is coming up." And what do we say, Julie? This is
the day that the Lord has made, and we shall rejoice and be glad in it.
and so then
Every single day.
Yeah. Then we started thinking maybe we should say it earlier than at the end of our walk.
But you had to get all of this other out of you first,
Right. But I do think that some of that memory work is another good way to do that. We might not be good. I might not be a good meditator, but I can say that over and over through my day.
I'm going to tell a tale too, and that is what I should have recorded today and did not was my phone conversation with Audrey, who spent 5 to 10 minutes eloquently talking about how grateful and appreciative she is, just naturally out of, who she is, for all of the love, the support, her family, how much she appreciates her kids and her grandkids, and how great they are and how wonderful everyone has been, and how grateful she is for 62 years with Phil, even though there's a hole in her heart. And I'm missing some of it, but it was absolutely beautiful. And for someone who has lost, their dear friend and husband, and in the middle of grief, she was living all of this today in a beautiful way. So thanks for teaching me, Audrey.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, amen.
That's when you know you've tapped into your superpower, is when you can find yourself grateful for grief. I'm spitting genuine about that. That's not an easy place to find yourself mentally, unless, like I said, you've worked those muscles, because it's all neural pathways, and you either have an ant infestation, automatic negative thoughts, those are ants. So you either have an automatic negative thought infestation, or you consciously rewire those pathways to focus on the positive. I found the best way to rewire it is through the practice of gratitude. If you ask yourself what your top 3 things are, limit yourself to 3 things you're grateful for, and then you find yourself saying, "Oh man, my cup of coffee didn't make the list. Oh, my job didn't make the list. Oh, my kids didn't even make the list today." And it begets an automatic positive response internally in your mind, and it starts wiring those pathways for positivity when you focus on the gratitude first. Our dad was very fond of saying, be grateful for what you have and to hell with what you don't have. And I think I finally understand what he meant by that. Just
He
my
had
opinion.
many pearls of wisdom, boys, that you didn't hear at the time, but obviously they stuck. Good. Dad.
Get rid of them. They stuck like glue. Are you kidding me? Business is hard to get. It's hard to keep.
And others that will not be repeated here.
Yes.
That's probably good. Is our next one the whole
Well, that's, I think do you think a section is about the right amount to
Yes.
cover? To go
Yes, I do.
tonight. So let's do days 2 and 3 next week, which are the obstacles to joy,
Fear, stress, and anxiety.
which will then set us up in 2 weeks for the last 2 days, which are the pillars of joy. So yeah, your next assignment is the next section, days 2 and 3.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. That's
Very
good.
good.
And
Doing, Christy?
Pardon?
I said, how are you doing in Ohio right now? Everything okay?
Oh, doing good. Yeah. I stay busy and all of this. That was so nice of Julie to invite me to this. I've been to your church before, but it's been a while. When I was in California before, but
that's true for all of us.
I haven't been to my church for 6 months either, but I watch it online. But anyway, yeah. So I've enjoyed this. And when Julie told me about this just yesterday, she could have given me a little more notice. But anyway, thank heavens for Amazon. I ordered it yesterday and it came today. So I
wow.
the first session.
You were busy.
I was. I texted Julie and said I got my homework done, but this morning I woke up and thought, oh, what I got to do today? And so I made some banana bread, and then my book came, so I spent a good part of the day reading that. So I thought, well, I didn't have to worry about what to do today. I mean, I'm usually busy. I sew and I'm busy. And one of the topics when we were talking about helping others, sometimes when I wake up and I think, what am I going to do today? Or I'm feeling a little down, I'll think, I need to help somebody then. And so then I try to think of a friend or somebody that's going through something or needs some help. And it does bring you joy. And it brings them joy. So it's a win-win. So this has helped
And
me
actually,
a lot.
because of COVID, we see more of each other now than we did before.
We do. We have, for sure.
There's that thing again.
Yeah. So thank you for welcoming me into the group.
Join us next time.
Yeah, I plan to, and I've appreciated everybody's comments and perspectives, and it's been very nice.
Good.
You can focus on the gratitude for the invite.
I certainly will. Making new friends.
Yeah.
Well, thanks to everyone, and blessings on your week. And let's hopefully your eyes and hearts are opened wider to joy this week.
Okay.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone.
Amen.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you next Sunday.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye now.
Adios.